It is Friday morning, and we are here for another episode of the 6-5 podcast. My name is Pat Moorhead with Moor Insights Strategy, and I am here in Austin broadcasting with my bestie, Daniel Newman, Futurum Research. How are you doing, buddy?
Good morning, everybody from the States. Beautiful Austin, Texas. Me out in the hills, you down in the city. But, you know, Pat, it's just another great week in tech. We must unpack this week, the week of Unpacked. But yeah, so much going on. Very excited. Lots of news, lots of stories. But that's not what we do. And by the way, this isn't even my show to host. So I'm going to boomerang it back to you.
What are you doing here?
What am I doing? It's your show. It's your show.
So it's good to have you back in the country, my friend. Where were you again?
It was in an undisclosed location and the hills of beautiful outside of Barcelona, Spain, doing something that most of you probably haven't done, and that's getting on an airplane. And if you've done that, it's getting on an airplane transatlantic. And if you've done that, it was going somewhere for a short enough period of time that you could actually take your return COVID test when you landed. And so let's talk about how that works. So you can actually land somewhere or take the COVID test that will authorize you more or less to fly home the same day you landed, and then you go spend multiple days exploring the city and you're still able to leave without it. I don't get this, dude. I don't get it. But what I do get is that the planes were full, the hotels were sold out, the restaurants were packed. There were a lot of masks, which was good, but I still think there seems to be this weird gap between what we hear and what we see, because I could not get across the street without running into people. So the world is happening. And so we've just got this interesting inflection point where whether it's Lollapalooza, whether it's, traveling abroad, people are out there living their lives, but we've got to find this balance between safe and, happy.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And if you are new to the 6-5 podcast, we cover 6 topics, 5 minutes each, sometimes 8 minutes each. And we might talk a little bit about the news to get context, but we really are about analysis and diving a little bit deeper into the meaning of it overall to the industry or to the company. Also, we do talk about publicly traded companies. Don't take anything we say on this show as investment advice. This is for educational and hopefully entertainment purposes only. Let's dive right in. Samsung Galaxy Unpacked. We have foldables, we have watches, we have earbuds, and everything in between. And the thing that I wanted to focus on was the foldables. So this is the third iteration of the foldables. I have mine right here, at least one of them. This is about all I can show under my agreement. That is the Galaxy Z Fold 3. That's the larger version. And then I didn't bring the other one, which is the Flip. Third generation. And what I'm seeing here is a continual iteration year after year to make this market happen. And what Samsung did characteristically was very similar to what they did in their latest iteration. Is they made them more durable, they made them faster, didn't make them lighter or thinner this time, but that's okay because they radically did this before. They improved the display and they lowered the price. In fact, I did a price comparison on a bundle, and you can get the Z Fold 3, which is the big one, which is the one with the monster display on it, for about $100 more than buying a high-end iPhone Pro. So iPhone 12 Pro Max. So we're really honing in on something big. And if you want to look at the Fold and look at the classic iPhone 12, you can actually get that bundle with earbuds for $100 less than you can get an iPhone 12. So I feel like this is where the curve starts to go up dramatically. And very similar to kind of the curve that we saw on when large form factor phones came out. We used to call them phablets, right? Where volumes were super low, in the millions, and then you saw this just hockey stick curve up and to the right. So I wouldn't be surprised if Samsung increases volumes by 5x, particularly on the Flip at that price point. And then it'll be interesting to see, Apple before phablet says we're sticking to our guns. If you want a large form factor device, we have a 7-inch iPad for you, and now we have 7-inch, 6.7-inch devices. And the only other comment that I want to make on their announcement is watch. So Apple Watch is, let me just say it, it is the gold standard of watches right now. And I don't mean, all watches, but basically smart watches. And the reason is Apple put so much performance in there and so much storage and memory that it could actually run applications. Samsung initially took a divergent view, and so did Google, where it was primarily really just for notifications. Okay. But what happened is I think people expect to actually have applications on their watch and not just notifications or some mirror of what's on their smartphone. And Google and Samsung got together on this Watch 4 and created an operating system that is a lot beefier. The specifications and the chips are a lot beefier. It uses N5 process from TSMC. Notice I did not say 5 nanometer because it's not 5 nanometer. It's TSMC N5 process. And we're going to see. We're going to get it on. And I have the new watch at home, and I'm going to give it a test. But this could be the beginning of some real competition for Apple Watch.
Well, as I said, we must unpack that I did. Listen, Pat, a number of pretty exciting announcements there. How's the crease? You are actually a power user. I've watched you use his Fold. He's not one of those people that just gets them and is like, hey, everybody, look on my Instagram of me using. I've watched you use this device for some time. How's the crease now? Because that was my big concern. Is the crease holding up pretty well?
Yeah, this is actually the 4th generation of the crease, and what they did is let me make sure be able to see this. What they did is they enclosed it. You used to be able to get debris underneath the screen at this crease, and what they've done is they've sealed it. In fact, they've sealed it so well that it's IP68. That means it's water resistant. Okay. And what they did is so they basically have a seal between the display, so you can actually get water on this thing, and it's supposed to be okay. And they also came up with a new screen from Corning called Gorilla Glass Victus, which, in terms of sub brands, kind of give me a break, but it is the best that you can get. The final thing that I didn't point out that I should have was that they added pen support. So what they did is they work with Wacom and with a special pen, right, that's made for this device. You can use it and have the same functionality as you would with a Note. And I think as it relates to any Note user, or anybody who gets into pen, or even a frontline worker, let's put a case on this thing with a frontline worker with a pen doing, check boxes and signatures and stuff like that. I think it increases the market size extensively.
So I asked that's when you ask an analyst a question that was just, hey, how was the crease? That's what you get. That's the answer you're going to get. No, it's great. 60 seconds. I just want to bring one thing to the attention that you didn't really talk about. Because you covered it really, really well. But as a sidebar, last week we talked a lot about the whole Google and putting their own chips in the Android phone and potentially partnering with Samsung and Exynos. Well, a week later, the company hasn't changed their direction there necessarily, but Qualcomm, Android, and Samsung came out with a joint release that the three companies are going to work deeply around the new Z Fold 3 and Z Flip 3, which are the foldables, based on the flagship Snapdragon 888. So if you kind of wonder what is going to power this next generation of foldables, it is going to be Qualcomm, and then Google is going to be working closely to create these very immersive experiences to be able to use this foldable surface. Anyone that's used, whether it's the Microsoft, the Duos, or has used the Fold, realize it's not the same as a normal Android device. There's a lot of work, a lot of development that went into it. These three companies are partnering together very closely. That's creating a lot of benefit for all of the users, and using these leading edge, best of class technologies and working together is what's going to make foldable a thing. And by the way, I do believe we're getting close. 2 years ago, I wasn't buying it. I see the value. I see thy light. Pat, thanks for unpacking that one.
Yeah, you got it. And the last thing I'll throw on the fire is that for the first time, Samsung is actually saying it's using a Qualcomm chip. Before it said it's using an octa-core or something like that. So let's move to the next topic. So HP brought out 2 new Chrome devices, an all-in-one desktop and a Chromebook. The Chromebook is powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 7C, and the all-in-one is powered by an Intel processor. And the big question here is HP going all in on Chrome OS? These are really interesting devices. I was able to use this desktop. That's a 21-inch desktop, has a super cool industrial design. Check it out. You know how stylish Paula is and what she would let in the kitchen and what she wouldn't. And she actually let me put this in the kitchen. Beautiful industrial design. It is Chrome OS. It's not Windows, so it will not run Windows applications. It will run Android applications, though, and any type of web application that you can. I used the bare minimum configuration. It's $599. So think about that: $599 with a 21-inch display, but it only had 3 gigs of memory. I felt that experience was fine for using Chrome and web apps, and even stuff like Instagram. And you can actually flip this 21-inch display to go vertical. So if you want to do Instagram, if you want to do any type of video applications that are vertical, you can do that. Where I wouldn't recommend this 4 gig memory configuration for $599 is if you're using OneNote or Outlook or Word. My experience was not good, and I believe that you should really opt for the 16 gig configuration. The other device that HP brought out was a Chromebook using a Qualcomm 7C. And it was another cool. This is a relatively new configuration that Qualcomm has that has almost all the performance of the Snapdragon 8, but it does not have 5G and it does not have 4G. And the reason they're doing this is to hit much lower price points. And I think if I'm correct, you can get the Chromebook X211. 11-inch Chromebook with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 7C with the pen for $599. So I think that's very, very affordable. I haven't used that one yet, but it really is game on for Chrome. I mean, Chrome, since COVID started, has doubled its market share, and it's primarily with K through 8, but also a lot of businesses out there picked up Chromebooks for the primary reason that they couldn't find any other devices, and they are very secure because for the most part you're operating out of a browser, and if you're an administrator you can turn off the Android capability. There's a lot of question, Daniel, whether Chrome OS, whether this is just a blip because of COVID, or it becomes more of a trend, and where Microsoft could potentially be challenged. Well, they are challenged at the low end, but it doubling its market share in 18 months has to be a bit alarming.
Yeah, I think we're experiencing both an expansion of the TAM overall, and then of course we're seeing the fact that we had this shortage and we had to meet supply, and we had to meet demand, and Chromebooks was an opportunity to do so. We've seen, of course, Intel had a lot of growth at that part of their business and in the last quarter. And HP, what I like about what they've come out with is essentially the company is developing very high quality industrial designs. We've seen Chromebooks evolve from sort of these amorphous, ugly physical machines that our kids had during high school or middle school to a machine that looks like a Surface or looks like a MacBook, or it's starting to look very nice. That 21-inch, very attractive to the eye. Running Android, for instance, on it. Now you start running applications and it starts to become like a giant, sweet iPad for Android users. And I know, again, I'm not saying Apple iPads are sweet, but for some people, they're pretty darn sweet. And then of course, the price point, you're getting 21 inches of Surface that enables a whole lot of work to be done. And last thing is, it's a clear indicator as it grows that there is a huge growth in enterprise for SaaS applications. Because if you have a browser and you're running SaaS, as long as you have enough compute power, enough horsepower, you can have a pretty good experience, and that's a pretty low cost machine. 21-inch, for instance, at $600, being able to run apps in a browser, that's like a nice desktop setup for somebody using something like, Salesforce, and doing it right out of the browser. I'm just saying that for example, because we might be heading down that path to talk about that pretty soon. By the way, last comment, Pat, just got to throw this in as a sidebar. Our friends at Morgan Stanley, they downgraded Micron this week. And I know we're not talking about memory chips, but all I'm saying is, why is it that everything we talk about, whether it's Unpacked, whether it's Chromebooks, is exploding? Yet somehow these analysts are somehow being all negative and bearish on memory or any semiconductor. Hello, the demand isn't even close to being met right now. Why are we downgrading stuff? Just as we talked about HP, Samsung, and the explosion of demand for these new forms, memory is going to support all these things. What's going on, man? What am I missing? Are semiconductors slowing down?
Yeah, this sounds like a great topic for those extended maybe an extended show, or maybe a bi-monthly where we can go deeper on something like that. We should talk about, that's a great first topic we can hit, which is the PC and device TAM and how that relates to semiconductors. Now that's good.
Buddy, let's do it. Let's come back to it. I know we can't do it now. It just crossed my mind. I was thinking about it as we're talking about all this growing market share in TAM. All right, keep going.
Let's hit the next topic. Salesforce looks to be competing in the video space. Maybe they want to be the Netflix of business videos, Daniel. I mean, is this a super innovative thing, or just a company that has too much time and money on its hands?
Interesting. So what you're talking about is Salesforce Plus, which is going to be rolled out this year at Dreamforce. And essentially it's going to start out as like 4 channels launched at Dreamforce. It's going to cover, Trailhead, which is its training. It's going to cover a series of industry topics. So I think it's Trailblazer, Customer 360 for success stories. It's going to have what they call its primetime channel, which is going to be like its announcements and news. And it's basically going to be like the broadcast engine of this year's Dreamforce. And I think
do you want to move the Chiron maybe?
Oh my God. The guy needs to move the Chiron. But so you got these 4 channels, and what we've really got going on here is that it's a digital media network. Now, Pat, going back 10 years, I was saying that, brands are the future of media. So we've seen, whether it was when Adobe launched CMO.com, when we've seen companies come out with these brand identities sitting underneath an enterprise to inform. Well, we sort of had the reverse situation during COVID. Events used to be everything. Events were the way. And of course, anybody that knows or has been to Dreamforce knows the amount of depth and and commitment that the Salesforce ecosystem has to Dreamforce. Well, now you don't have the same event. And even if the company does wind up being able to deliver a live experience, it's going to be this hybrid experience. How do you immerse people more closely? Well, today we've all seen, including, I don't know, maybe one of the world's greatest events called the 6.5 Summit, where the biggest leaders in tech come to go. But when you want to put that out, you got to build this whole brand experience and identity. Where does that brand experience and identity go? Well, we've seen consumer tech, whether it's been Apple Plus, Paramount Plus, whether that's been Netflix, whether that's Hulu. We're seeing all the consumer content go towards these streaming experiences full of content that's high value and impact for people that like sports, or people that like movies, or people that like sitcoms and shows. Well, Salesforce is kind of taking a twofold approach here. The first approach is, they've got their inherent customer base that really cares about Salesforce content, and maybe are looking for new ways, more immersive ways to experience that. So I kind of called it, CNBC meets QVC. You've got this business broadcast, but it's advertorial. It's going to be content that helps people better understand the market that they're already invested in, right? They're immersed in it. The other side of it, though, is how does that scale? I know you want to say something. I'm going to finish this thought, though. Hold that. Is this whole idea that how do you expand that? There's so much interesting and high impact business content. And if you are the average person perusing the internet, what you come across is rarely dictated by what is you want to see most. It typically is what the internet thinks you want to see most based upon your behavior. And so Salesforce maybe believes deep down that when it comes to the business content that you consume, whether that's better understanding how customers are digitally transforming, or specifically learning about new products and solutions, that they can do a good job of helping to disseminate that information to you. Our enterprise is going to be the next big broadcast channel. Is this a forward move or a backward move, going into more of a broadcast as opposed to using, YouTube and using Vimeo and using an owned media site and using social? Well, what I do see is aggregation here. How do you aggregate all the content, put the best content in one place, make it consumable? And Pat, I'll add one thing that I know you will appreciate here, and that is high production quality. Because the one thing we know from doing an event, when we went on site, when we went into a real studio and we created high production segments, those were the best performers we had, as opposed to a StreamYard or a Zoom or a WebEx segment, which are great, but they're not the same as doing something with high production. So maybe we're starting to see a little bit of a pivot back to higher production video here. I think Salesforce Plus could be a plus, but it's going to take a little time to see how this evolves from being more of an advertorial network of content centered around Salesforce to, is the company going to become the epicenter of business content and take on our current business media networks?
So, gosh, where do I start? I'm trainable, Daniel. My first take is, do you do a press release and do you do a big launch on your own internal content? No. It just seems, it was just odd to me, right? It seemed like kind of marketing going to town. CMO wants a press release, and the company wants to look really, really smart. If they're trying to take on broadcast video, listen, I can see why I think a company does need a combination of their own first-party content, and then they need attribution from third party, and some of that's earned, and some of that is paid. And as I see the tech press going through its financial challenges, and a lot of the top tech press that I used to follow, going to Substack or creating their own channels, right? I think everything is up in the air. So, did it warrant this big splash? I don't think so. Most companies do this and they don't even talk about it because, why would other people, or why do people even care, right? I mean, is this going to make Salesforce a stickier place? Is it going to be a destination? Am I going to want to go to Salesforce for, my content as a small business, and they're going to teach me how to do that? I'm going to go to them as opposed to HBR. or MIT Technology Review. I don't know. We'll see. I'm keeping an open mind here. My initial thought is,
can an enterprise become the next big media? I mean, that's the question mark. Like, can an enterprise compete with? I don't know, but look at what Amazon's doing, buying studios. Maybe there's something here. I
get it on the consumer play, my friend. I totally 100%. Distribution is no longer a differentiator, and therefore you have to have the content, right? The networks are feeling that, and everybody knows they have to get into their first party content. Amazon was only a distribution play, did not have their own content, and that's why they're buying it. But I'm having a hard time. Maybe totally. I'm just not progressive enough figuring out from a B2B standpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As we move to the next one, I say is, will we start to see big enterprises buy big business media? That might be something to keep an eye on.
Oh my gosh, look at, we've already seen that with the Washington Post, right, owned by Jeff Bezos. And doesn't Benioff own, is it Newsweek or Time? Owns one of those. So, hey, let's get into the cloud here. AWS won a $10 billion deal to supply the NSA. Gosh, is this going to be another Jedi redux here, Daniel, or what's going on?
Jeez, Pat. First of all, I love one of the articles I read. It was something like the NSA, the National Security Agency, was awarded a secret cloud computing contract worth up to $10 billion. Guess what? The secret's out, everybody. They won. I think it was a contract that had a code name Wild and Stormy, which is just for fun. And yes, much like Jedi, I believe, Pat, that within like hours of the award, the supposed award, that we already saw Microsoft file an appeal on the award. I do wonder if any large government cloud contract will ever be awarded again without controversy or contestment from the competitors that feel they did not win. As all of these companies have continued to evolve and build better and better mousetraps and more vertically and horizontally integrated solutions, I'm sure all of them, whether that's Oracle, IBM, Google, or Microsoft, or AWS, feel that they are more than capable of supplying every one of these contracts. The details on this award are pretty sparse, Pat. So I actually think, the most interesting debate here really is, what does the future of government contracting for cloud look like? And so, my take here, Pat, is two things. I want to keep this particular segment kind of short because we got, we went a little extra on the beginning one, so we have to always make up for it. But to what I had just said is, I think, Pat, unfortunately, we will see every major cloud contract in our future will be contested. And secondly, I actually do believe that single award is going to go by the wayside in the future. And this will go by the wayside as almost instantly as fast as we saw CEOs like Andy Jassy and Satya Nadella stand up and acknowledge that multi-cloud is a thing. The CIA had what was called a C2E contract that was worth supposedly tens of billions. And guess what happened, Pat? It was awarded to 5 companies. That means every major cloud player in the US, I believe that entails them all. IBM, Google, Oracle, AWS, and Microsoft were part of that award. I think that's what we're going to start seeing in the future. And if this big wild and stormy contract ends up being a wild storm of litigation and ongoing press and delayed deployment, which is really what needs to happen, I think we're going to see more and more governments are just going to start splitting them out and creating what I would say almost are these buffer zones where $10 billion is split up, not 5 ways, 2 billion, but it could be 9 and 9 goes to 1 and 1 goes to 5, but it's going to give them these levers to pull to make sure if everyone's awarded, maybe it will speed up the deployment.
Yeah, I'm really wondering if this will actually help multi-cloud become easier, right? Because today, multi-cloud is not easy, right? You have to have a data plane, you have to have a security plane, you have to have a lot of other things, networking plane, networking is different. And I'm curious if this will force a government API that says, no, all my suppliers of multi-cloud, you need to get on the same API because I'm not going through all of this. Okay. I'm really interested. By the way, for the record, I don't think Andy Jassy has ever said multi-cloud is a reality. He says hybrid cloud is a reality. And the company introduces multi-cloud capabilities, right? Like a Kubernetes.
You do, though, Pat, says everything. Okay, you're right.
Okay,
he may have never used the word. So please, if you're out there and you want to correct me, feel free to use this as an opportunity.
I already did, Daniel.
Well, you're always going to do that. I'm talking about people that are actually doing the research.
Ouch. All right, next topic, please.
Let's stick with Amazon.
Let's stick with Amazon. So Amazon made an announcement yesterday, and you can also read this on my Forbes article. Amazon announced that in 2021, it will have invested or spent $120 billion on third-party supplies and services in 2021. And, it's funny, this is right on the heels of saying, the PPI saying that Amazon is the largest investor in America in terms of any type of investment that's CapEx, and that's even hiring people. And I think this is important. Amazon deservedly gets some heat in a lot of things, but I think most of the press takes a glass half empty approach to the company. I think primarily because Jeff Bezos is the richest man on the planet. And it's so powerful. And listen, I don't want anybody to confuse that with, I do think that the third party independent press should always be keeping people accountable. But I think it has gone a little bit overboard, and things are viewed in different types of lens. And let's face it, if you're beat and all you do is write about Amazon, you've got nothing to write about Amazon about, and something pops up that could be controversial or make a good headline, I think you're naturally going to write about that. So it's just balance. And the reason that I wrote this article was to give some balance to the conversation. And I think it's also important that anybody who is looking at antitrust actions and potentially weakening Amazon in some way, shape, or form also understands the investments that the company is making. And by the way, I would never say that would ever overshadow anything that would be antitrust or abusing antitrust. But I think looking at these things holistically is important. And when I look at how it's well above the minimum wage, it is a decade ahead of the Paris Accord on the environment. It's the nation's largest employer at this point. That's not government. I think all those things need to be taken and looked at.
Yeah, because of our time and we need to keep the show moving, I could talk about this topic for an hour. 150 billion invest in the U.S. in small and mid-sized companies. This is an absolute boondoggle for all this antitrust talk. This wouldn't be one-to-one distributed out through a less capable platform. This is based upon growth. This is a growing ecosystem that has massive implications for small business and creates and validates small businesses in a way that would be very difficult for them to do for themselves. When it comes to antitrust, breaking up these companies, I've written a piece, I wrote a headline in Market Watch that said specifically, treat Amazon differently when you talk about big tech regulation, because it's a different thing than an app store. It's a different thing. It just is, and it needs to be looked at. These things sometimes don't want to be considered, but they should be, Pat. Another topic for you and I to deep dive on a separate show format. You'll see more from us soon when we deep dive in some of these controversial topics to provide everybody the color. But we've got one more topic. It was a heater for this week, Pat. I'm not the host, so my instincts took over. It's
I
your
am
show,
so
buddy.
sorry. No, I appreciate that. No, Oracle introduced the MySQL version of HeatWave, and they did send shockwaves because they basically name and shamed every database company out there. And my favorite is what they talked about with Snowflake, which is, they're just fun to pick on because of their growth rate and the way that they deal with the industry. But essentially, it's an in-memory database, okay, as a approach, and it's accelerated by AMD EPYC hardware. And essentially, it does two things. It does transactional and it does analytics at the same time, and it's in memory, and that's what gives it. Oracle's claiming 7 times faster than Snowflake at 1/5 the cost. And I love the name because it is absolutely bringing the heat here. And I know everybody is paying attention. And, when sometimes things are too good to be true, they are. But here, just based on how they're approaching it, and you don't have to ETL data between OLTP and analytics, and it's in memory and it's accelerated. That's why these numbers are so astronomical. And there is a cost to moving data between OLTP and ETLing it out to an analytics program. So Oracle, one step ahead, I think, here on MySQL. And by the way, don't forget, Oracle owns MySQL, okay? That's something that people forget. Everybody's like, oh, no, that can't be. They can't be the largest investor. Well, they bought the company MySQL. Okay, so they know MySQL really, really well.
Yeah, just quick touch because we're coming up on time, Pat. But Ron Westfall, research director on my team, wrote a great headline. He came up with this. Want to give him credit. It said Oracle MySQL HeatWave melts Snowflake with unparalleled price and performance. Read the piece. I'll put it in the show notes. You named a couple of really big advantages because this was built for cloud, built with Oracle in mind, and with the fact that the company owns MySQL, the ML and automation that's built in, the autopilot architecture for MySQL, the scale out data management, and the fact, like I said, that it was cloud first design. And let me just reiterate the things that you said, Pat. 6.8 times faster performance, 5.2x cost advantage, meaning you're basically talking about the example they used on a equal cost. You'd spend about $80,536 a year on HeatWave. What would cost you $420,480 to run on Snowflake? It's a no-brainer. Snowflake has to be trembling in its boots, but there's no snow on the ground, so maybe it needs to wear sandals. Pat?
Ooh, I like that. Daniel, I'm going to take us out of here. I want to thank everybody for logging in, signing in. If you like what you heard, press that subscribe button and give all compliments to me. If you didn't like something on the show or have a complaint, at Daniel Newman UV on Twitter. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. We love you. Take care.